So, what have I learned this semester in my History of China class? Well, I've learned that history tends to repeat itself. For example, in China, there is the dynastic cycle, which is accompanied by the notion of the mandate of heaven. A dynastic cycle is the period in which a group is ruled from the rise to the fall. It is split into three periods: the rise, the peak, and the fall. The mandate of heaven dictates that after the dynastic cycle has been founded, only the person who has the legitimacy to rule will be blessed by Tian, and whoever is the most ideal ruler. The mandate of heaven is picky, but it does not care about birth. Nobles and peasants alike have the chance to receive it if they are legitimate enough. This concept was well received by the citizens because it allowed them to overthrow, or not overthrow, but to get rid of corrupt or incompetent rulers. The ruler could keep this blessing for as long as they could if they were legitimate. The mandate of heaven was first identified in the records of the Duke of Zhou. It justified the fact that the Shang dynasty had ended for a good reason, and that the Zhou had started for the same reason. The Shang passed on the throne by family, and if if someone were corrupt or incompetent, then there would be no way to get rid of them. The mandate of heaven, however, ensured that this was not impossible. The better ruler would step up, and the incompetent or corrupt one would be forced down. Specifically, there are four main ideas of the mandate of heaven. They are that if the ruler is blessed by heaven, and that they were the only legitimate ruler at the time, then they would receive the blessing from Tian, and that their legitimacy was determined by how good of a ruler and how good of a servant they were to heaven. Their virtues were heavily important. And as long as the ruler met this requirement, then they could receive the mandate of heaven, even if he were the son of a ruler from before. The claim that the Xia dynasty had existed was also in the books of the Zhou dynasty. They claimed that the reason the Xia dynasty had ended was because that they had lost the legitimacy of ruling, and subsequently Tian gave the blessing to someone else, and so the Shang dynasty started. The four reasons of ruling that the mandate of heaven gave had serious implications on the rulers. For example, the rulers were under the constant eyes of everyone who was under its sway. The rulers had to watch what they said and did to ensure that rebellion would not be an act in which they would be overthrown for fear of not suspected of having the mandate of heaven. They knew that if they had committed any bad behavior or bad acts, possible attempts to overthrow him would occur. They would constantly check their own behavior and also the well-being of their subjects. If there were anyone who had troubles, the ruler would have to attempt to fix it to ensure that everyone still thought that he had the mandate of heaven, even if he didn't. The mandate of heaven occurs in cycles, and in Chinese history, we can see it repeated many times. For example, Shen of Yao, Shen, and Yu was a peasant, but he still became a ruler because he was known for his merit and filial piety. In the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong was the one who led the communists to power. He was a peasant too, but he was still able to lead them. This was because they both had the mandate of heaven. And this is what I've taken from my History of China class. The mandate of heaven is an important concept of Chinese history.